Ready? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أود بداية أن أرحب بزميلي وصديقي معالي الأستاذ جون كيري وزير خارجية الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية، وزملائي وأشقائي من وزراء خارجية دول مجلس التعاون، ومعالي الأمين العام للمجلس لوجودهم في المملكة العربية السعودية. استقبل صباح هذا اليوم سيدي خادم الحرمين الشريفين الملك سلمان بن عبد العزيز آل سعود معالي الوزير كيري، وكما عقد صاحب السمو الملكي ولي العهد وصاحب السمو الملكي ولي العهد جلسة مباحثات موسعة مع معاليه أمس. تم بحث عدد من القضايا ذات الاهتمام المشترك بما فيها العلاقات الثنائية وكيفية تحسينها وتعزيزها في كل المجالات، الأوضاع في المنطقة سواء كانت سوريا أو مواجهة الإرهاب أو التصدي لتدخلات إيران في شؤون المنطقة، وأيضا كان هناك تركيز على الأوضاع في اليمن وكيفية الوصول إلى إعادة استئناف المباحثات بين الأطراف اليمنية للوصول إلى حل سلمي. اليوم عقدنا جلسة بما يسمى بالمجموعة الرباعية التي تشمل المملكة العربية السعودية ودولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة والمملكة المتحدة والولايات المتحدة، والتي تنعقد من وقت لآخر للتشاور حول الأوضاع في اليمن. بعد ذلك كان حضر هذه الجلسة معالي المبعوث العام لأمين عام الأمم المتحدة لليمن السيد إسماعيل ولد الشيخ أحمد، وأطلع هذه اللجنة على آخر المستجدات في الوضع اليمني، كما تم التباحث معه عن بعض الأفكار لدفع العملية السلام في اليمن إلى الأمام. وبعد ذلك تم عقد اجتماع لوزراء خارجية دول مجلس التعاون مع معالي وزير خارجية الولايات المتحدة ومعالي وزير خارجية بريطانيا ومعالي المبعوث الخاص للأمين العام. دار النقاش حول عديد من القضايا، ولكن كان التركيز على اليمن وكيفية دفع العملية السلمية إلى الأمام. وفي هذا الإطار كان التركيز على أهمية الوصول إلى حل مبني على المرجعيات الثلاث اللي هي مبادرة الخليجية ومخرجات الحوار الوطني اليمني وقرار مجلس الأمن 2216، كما تم رفض الخطوات أحدية الجانب الذي اتخذها الحوثي صالح بما فيها الإعلان عن تشكيل مجلس رئاسي في اليمن، وهذا الأمر رفضته الأطراف الدولية الفاعلة، والذي أكدت عليه بشكل واضح مجموعة ما يسمى بالجي 18 اللي تشمل 18 سفير من 18 دولة تعمل مع بعض وتتعاون وتنسق فيما يتعلق باليمن. استطعنا الخروج برؤية فيما يتعلق بخارطة الطريق لليمن، والذي بحثها معنا معالي المندوب الأممي بالنسبة لليمن، ليكون هناك وضوح فيما يتعلق بالحل النهائي والذي سيبحثها المبعوث الأممي مع الأطراف اليمنية. وقدمنا كلنا دعمنا الكامل لهذه الجهود، وعبرنا عن أملنا في أن تستطيع الأطراف اليمنية استئناف المفاوضات والوصول إلى حل سلمي يؤدي إلى انتهاء الحرب ويؤدي إلى تحويل اليمن من حروب ودمار إلى إعادة بناء واستقرار. كما بحثنا موضوع التدهور في المؤسسات اليمنية وبالذات المؤسسات المالية، وكان هناك اجتماع في الرياض منذ يومين مع متخصصين في هذا الشأن للنظر في كيفية حماية والحفاظ على المؤسسات المالية من التدهور الذي تم فيها بسبب تصرفات الحوثي صالح فيها. المملكة العربية السعودية ودول مجلس التعاون عبروا كما عبرت الولايات المتحدة والمملكة المتحدة عن اهتمامها وحرصها في إدخال المساعدات الإنسانية لليمن. كما تعلمون المملكة العربية السعودية هي الدولة الأولى فيما يتعلق بتقديم المساعدات الإنسانية لليمن عبر مركز الملك سلمان وعبر دعم مباشر. ونحن حريصين جدا على أن نقدم كل المساعدات الإنسانية الممكنة للأشقاء في اليمن، ونحن حريصين جدا على أن تكون كل الطرق مفتوحة لإدخال هذه المؤسسات. ونحن نطالب الأطراف اليمنية بالذات الحوثيين على فك الحصار من المدن اليمنية وللسماح بإدخال المساعدات للمحتاجين في اليمن. ونحن نأمل أيضا أن نستطيع أن يكون هناك تجاوب لإرادة المجتمع الدولي في حل الأزمة في اليمن بشكل سلمي، ونناشد جميع الأطراف اليمنية على الاستجابة مع المبعوث الأممي والعمل معه لإخراج اليمن من أزمتها الحالية والتركيز على إعادة البناء. فمرة ثانية أشكركم معالي الوزير على زيارتكم للمملكة العربية السعودية، وأشكركم على الاجتماعات والتشاورات البناءة والمثمرة التي تمت بيننا بشكل ثنائي وبيننا في دول مجلس التعاون وبينكم. شكرا مرة ثانية وأهلا وسهلا بكم مرة ثانية في المملكة العربية السعودية.
Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and a special thank you to my good friend Adel Al-Jubeir, the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'm delighted with his partnership, and I'm very grateful to him for hosting a series of discussions here in Jeddah. And as he has just finished relating to all of you, we had a very, very constructive series of discussions. I also want to thank UN Special Envoy Ismail Al-Sheikh Ahmed. Very grateful to him for his work over these last months, but also for his joining us here today and helping to shape the discussions that we had. I landed less than 24 hours ago, and I have to tell you it has been busy. It has, however, most importantly, been very productive. Last night, I joined the Foreign Minister for a working dinner with His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef and His Royal Highness Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. And this morning, I met with His Majesty King Salman. And during these meetings, we had an opportunity to discuss a broad array of the issues that face the region and the issues which are so central to the partnership between the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We underscored again and again, frankly, because again and again we found ourselves in agreement on certain approaches. We underscored the close partnership that we are currently engaged in on any number of fronts. This afternoon, Adel and I met with our counterparts from the Gulf Cooperation Council. The UAE, Oman, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Kingdom joined us, as well as UN Special Envoy Ismail Ahmed. The purpose of our meetings was quite simply to see if together we could find a way to end the violence of Yemen, to end the war, and to address the deeply troubling situation there, which has now not only killed more than 6,500 people to date, but become a humanitarian crisis of enormous magnitude and a growing security threat, and one that everybody agreed. There was no debate about this. If we cannot find a solution to the war that meets the appropriate needs of respecting the sovereignty and the security of Saudi Arabia, while at the same time providing the Houthi, a minority, an opportunity to be part of a government in the future, then things can only go in one direction, and that is worse in Yemen. The restoration of stability to Yemen is vital in order to ease the suffering and to prevent groups like Al-Qaeda and Daesh from taking further advantage of the political and security vacuum and the instability that has been created. It is essential for Yemen, for countries in the region, and for the world community in general to agree on a plan to end the fighting and achieve a lasting peace. The bloodshed, I think most would agree, has simply gone on for too long. It has to stop. And everyone that we met with today, all of the ministers who came here, were in full agreement. There is no military solution. As I made clear in our meetings today, and I want to emphasize this, the United States is committed to the security of Saudi Arabia. We were deeply troubled by the attacks on Saudi territory. We were deeply troubled by the photographs which were shown to me early on by His Royal Highness Mohammed bin Nayef showing missiles that had come from Iran that were being positioned on the Saudi border. And we are deeply concerned about missile attacks that have taken place on border towns. It is basic international law. Every country has a right to a safe and sovereign border, and any violation of that is unacceptable and a violation of international law, and a country has a right to defend itself. The threat additionally posed by the shipment of missiles and other sophisticated weapons into Yemen from Iran extends well beyond Yemen. It is not a threat just to Saudi Arabia. It is a threat to the region. It is a threat to the United States, and it cannot continue. As we have stated previously, we're also extremely concerned by reports of civilian casualties and the destruction of vital infrastructure, no matter who causes it. Strikes that damage or destroy homes, businesses, and hospitals not only exacerbate the suffering of the Yemeni people, but they also undermine attempts to try to resolve peacefully the challenges that the country faces. I did raise this in a number of our meetings, but let me share with you, I know it is a concern fully shared by Foreign Minister Al-Jubeir and by the government of Saudi Arabia. And he has committed, and the government have committed to investigating troubling reports that we've all seen in order to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Now, we all know that the humanitarian situation in Yemen has deteriorated rapidly. And frankly, that just underscores the reasons that we came here today, and it underscores the work that we have to do. The numbers don't begin to capture the true depth of the tragedy, but they are nevertheless staggering. More than 2 million Yemenis are now displaced from their homes. Food shortages have driven prices up 60% since last March, and they have brought the country to the brink of famine. More than 14 million people are facing severe hunger and malnutrition, including 1 in 3 children under the age of 5. Overall, 80% of Yemenis are in need of humanitarian assistance. I have to say that to date, the international response to this crisis has fallen short of filling the gap between the supplies that are available and those that are required. The United States has been the largest donor by far, and today I can announce we will contribute another $189 million in urgently needed aid. We strongly urge other countries in and outside the region to expand their contributions as well. And every party has an obligation to allow the unfettered flow of humanitarian assistance to Yemenis in all parts of the country. That is necessary to save lives, and it is also mandated under international law, and it is the right thing to do. But the surest way to relieve the hardships and the hunger is to stop the fighting, end the war. And we need to return as quickly as possible to a ceasefire that can lead to a permanent end to the conflict. I want to thank the Saudis, who actually contributed very significantly to the efforts in Kuwait, and I thank the Kuwaitis, who pushed very hard for a peaceful political solution to this crisis. And most of us thought that an agreement had been reached with the Houthi. But unfortunately, at the last minute, the Houthi decided otherwise, and so we find ourselves where we are today. We all agreed today, and Saudi Arabia is front and center in wanting to find a real solution, a political solution to this conflict. The United States believes that the UN-led process affords the very best chance for an agreement that will end the violence and address the political disputes that caused this violence. And the United States strongly supports, together with the GCC, that overwhelmingly today backed efforts to support UN Special Envoy Ahmed to get the negotiations back on track and to move forward as rapidly as possible. This morning, 4 of us, the United Kingdom, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States met to discuss ways to break the impasse in Yemen. And I thank all of the participants in that for their extremely constructive dialogue. Together with UN Special Envoy Ismail, we agreed on a renewed approach to negotiations, with both a security and political track simultaneously working in order to provide a comprehensive settlement. The political and security track would be unified into one sequential implementation process. This afternoon, the entire GCC weighed in and agreed unanimously with this new initiative, a comprehensive approach that gives both sides confidence that the other is following through. It prioritizes the rights and the sovereignty of the people of Yemen, and the details will be finalized by the parties themselves in negotiations. That is as it ought to be. The final agreement, however, in broad outline, would include, in the first phase, the swift formation of a new national unity government with power shared among the parties, the withdrawal of forces from Sana'a and other key areas, the transfer of all heavy weapons, including ballistic missiles and launchers, from the Houthis and forces allied with them to a third party. The agreement would require the new unity government to respect the security, the integrity, and the sanctity of international borders, and it would prohibit the deployment of weapons from Yemeni territory that threaten international waterways or the security of Yemen's neighbors. We believe that this is a fair and sensible approach, and we are grateful to Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the others who joined here today in fashioning what can only be deemed to be a reasonable approach. And we encourage the Houthi and their allies and any other country involved in this to be supportive of that. Ultimately, it is the parties that will have to finalize a text, and it is the parties who will have to finalize the steps necessary for the Yemeni people to adopt a new constitution, hold free and fair elections, and resume their daily lives under a new democratically elected government. In addition, my counterparts and I also committed to providing future support, economic support, stabilization support, to help meet the urgent humanitarian needs, to stabilize the economy, and to assist in the development and reconstruction. From here, from today, Special Envoy Ahmed will immediately begin a series of consultations with the parties to work out the final details of this approach. And if the parties engage in those details, and if they engage in a legitimate process that will provide the opportunity for the resumption of the full measure of the ceasefire agreement that was reached on April 10th of the year. Now, today in Jeddah, I think we have re-emphasized, and we are re-emphasizing here now publicly, that this war needs to end, and it needs to end as quickly as possible. But it also needs to end in a way that protects the rights and the sovereignty of Saudi Arabia and of the region, and does not require a compromise on any country's security. For many reasons, we have to do this, but also because we need to focus on the fight against al-Qaeda and also against Daesh. The agreement that we have endorsed today addresses all the parties' concerns. Now, it's never easy, we understand that, but the United States will remain heavily engaged diplomatically, along with our international partners, in order to help ensure that the needs of the region's security are met, and to ensure that the Yemeni people get the humanitarian assistance and ultimately the peace and the security that they need and deserve. So I again thank my Foreign Minister Al-Jubeir, the Special Envoy Ahmed, and my counterparts from the United Kingdom and the GCC nations for their partnership and for their commitment to ending this conflict as soon as possible. And I particularly thank my friend Adel for his partnership and his open-minded efforts to try to find a way forward in this endeavor. Thank you.
First question today comes from Leslie Roughton from Reuters.
Thank you. Thank you for outlining that plan. Mr. Secretary, how do you believe that this plan could make a difference this time over what has occurred over the last few months? Also, after 18 months of airstrikes and lots of advice from the United States on avoiding the civilian casualties, why is the Saudi-led coalition still continuing to hit those facilities? And have you got any guarantees that that's going to stop? Mr. Minister, if I might, do you support the decision by the Hadi government to cut ties to the central bank, which is actually dramatically worsening the humanitarian situation for a lot of Yemenis? And what has your air campaign achieved in a year, and what is your end game here?
Well, do you want me to go first? Or, okay. Why is this going to make a difference? It depends on the Houthis whether or not this will make a difference, and it depends on their supporters, their proxies. This is a very reasonable approach. And the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states have, I think, put together a proposal that fairly meets the needs of the parties. This is a proposal that offers the Houthis an opportunity to have confidence in the governing structure that will be put in place for Yemen. It offers them participation in that process. The Houthi people need to remember, are not a majority of the country, they're a minority, and a very small minority. And it is important to recognize that the people of Yemen elected a government, and the president of that government was sent out of the country by violence. The international community has supported, and the United Nations has supported through Resolution 2216, a set of principles about what needs to be respected here. And the truth is that this is a very fair-minded effort by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and others to put on the table a proposal that offers participation in governance in exchange for the end of violence and the laying down of weapons. It provides a capacity for confidence building in the withdrawal from communities that are inappropriately taken, and for a political process to cut in, to play as that withdrawal takes place. So our sense is the difference here is that this leaves nothing for future speculation. This has a clarity to it about how confidence can be built, what the end game looks like, and how the parties can get there. But it also requires, fairly, that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia not be subject to missiles from another country being pointed at its cities and lying on its border, or to have troops from another country across its border in its communities wreaking havoc and spreading violence. So it is a very fair approach, and if the Houthi do not see the wisdom of this approach, then it seems clear to me that the international community will understand exactly what the resistance is and where it comes from and what the problem is in achieving a fair political solution in Yemen. With respect to the civilian casualties, we talked about that. We've had open discussions about it actually for several months. It's not a secret. And the Saudis have taken seriously everybody's concerns about this. I think every Yemeni that is killed, any innocent person is killed, it affects all of us. And there are many steps that are being taken and have been taken to try to minimize that. I think that it is clear that some progress has been made, but there's more work to do. What is important is the Saudis are not denying that there's work to do. They accept that we need to work together in order to prove that. We need to work to make sure that operations are conducted and carried out in a way that is as precise as possible, with as minimal collateral impact as possible under the circumstances of war. And we've been very clear about our concern about civilian casualties, about the destruction of infrastructure, and we've talked about those concerns. We talked about them last night. We talked about them again today. And I'm very pleased that the foreign minister has agreed and his country has agreed to investigate exactly where things may have gone awry, why they might have, and what can be done about it to make sure that it doesn't happen again. At the same time, we understand that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is responding to very real threats on its border, to people who have crossed the border and killed people in Saudi Arabia, to missiles that have been fired from another country, that have come from even another country, and that have been fired into Saudi communities. Obviously, no country can sit there and allow that to happen indiscriminately. So we take our commitments to Saudi security seriously. We also take our global commitments under humanitarian law seriously, and we're working with Saudi Arabia as well as possible to address those concerns.
Thank you for the question. I would like to go back and address the issue of how this started. The Yemeni people rose up against President Saleh and demanded change. And the GCC countries, including Saudi Arabia, worked in order to come up with a compromise that would spare Yemen harm and minimize bloodshed. That was the GCC initiative. The GCC initiative set the stage for the change in government from Saleh to Hadi. As an interim government, the national dialogue was established in Yemen among Yemenis in order to conceive and build a better future for all Yemenis. And the national dialogue did tremendous work in terms of the governance of Yemen, in terms of the rights of Yemeni citizens, in terms of the government structure, in terms of what kind of constitution they want. And they began to write the constitution. Then what happened? The Houthis moved from Sa'da to Umran. Then they moved from Umran and occupied Sana'a by force, not by the ballot box, by force, by shooting people, by killing people, by taking people hostage. Then the government had to flee to Taiz and to Aden. They proceeded to occupy the rest of the country. They surrounded the presidential palace in Aden. and they were very close to capturing and possibly killing the legitimate president of Yemen. He asked for assistance under Article 51 of the UN Charter, and we responded along with a coalition of 10 other countries in order to protect Yemen from being taken over by a radical militia allied to Iran. What were we facing? We were facing a radical militia, a virtual Hezbollah, that was now in possession of a government, a central bank, which they proceeded to loot incidentally to the tune of $100 million a month, with ballistic missiles and with an air force. This represented a clear and present danger to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We saw ballistic missiles being deployed along our border. We responded. We have no interest in Yemen. We have no claims on Yemen. We want a stable, prosperous, secure, peaceful Yemen. We have a large community of Yemenis in Saudi Arabia. We've had them for a very long time. We have been by far the single most largest provider of foreign assistance to Yemen since 1970. No country has given more to Yemen than Saudi Arabia has. And we are committed to helping our Yemeni brethren. But we responded out of necessity. We responded to remove a threat. We responded to protect the legitimate government. We responded under authority of UN resolution. That's what we did. In order to protect Yemen, and in order to protect ourselves and our borders. What have we achieved? We have liberated territory from the Houthis. We have protected the legitimate government. We have substantially reduced the threat to our border and our people. It's not gone, but it's substantially less than it is now. And we have ensured that Yemen does not fall under the grasp of Hezbollah and Iran. That's what we've achieved. There's more to achieve, and we hope that it can be done through the political process. Keep in mind that the Houthis, in a country of 26 million people, are less than 50,000. That's their number. 10% of the population of Sada. That's who we have. And they want to take over a country, and they want to have the right to have veto power over that country. Would that be acceptable in any system? I doubt it. So we're saying the Houthis have every right to be part of the political process in Yemen like every other citizen. But they cannot have a privileged position where they have veto rights over a country of 26 million in which they represent less than 50,000. That's what we've done. Civilian casualties. We have been extremely careful and cautious in trying to minimize and hopefully avoid civilian casualties. And where there have been reports of such casualties, we have a mechanism to investigate. We review our operations, we review our procedures in order to ensure that civilian casualties are minimized. That's what international humanitarian law requires, and that's what we go by. We have no interest in creating animosity with the Yemeni people. What I don't see is, I don't see much criticism of the Houthis deploying child soldiers, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. I don't see criticism of the Houthis laying siege to towns and villages and starving people by preventing the supply of humanitarian assistance. I don't see the outrage that should be there when the Houthis literally steal humanitarian assistance and use it to barter for political advantage. I don't see much outrage when the Houthis loot the central bank to the tune of $100 million a month, to the point where the bank is becoming insolvent. And I don't see people being outraged at the Houthis lobbing ballistic missiles into Saudi Arabia and killing our people. And I don't see outrage at the indiscriminate artillery shelling by the Houthis against Yemeni villages and towns. So yes, we do our best to minimize civilian casualties. We do our best to investigate when we have reports of these, and we have investigated them. And we review our measures and procedures to ensure that we minimize them. What have the Houthis done on their side? Nothing. With regards to the issue of the central government, I believe I addressed it in the sense of the financial institutions in Yemen have been affected negatively to the point where we need to find ways to protect them. We are working with a number of our allies, including the United States and Great Britain, in order to look for mechanisms that could be effective ways to ensure that the Yemeni government can operate financially, but that would prohibit or prevent the Houthis from taking that money. Thank you.
فهد.
السلام عليكم. فهد السمحان من قناة الإخبارية السعودية. السؤال إلى معالي الوزير جون كيري، طبعا أرحب فيه في المملكة العربية السعودية، وسؤالي له ما مدى التزام الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية اتجاه اليمن خصوصا بعد سحب المستشارين الأمريكيين؟ وإذا سمحتم لي أيضا من خلال الاجتماع أريد أن أسأل هل تم الاتفاق على صيغة دولية لإلزام الانقلابيين الحوثيين بالقرارات الدولية ذات صلة أيضا بالأزمة اليمنية؟ وشكرا لكم.
Well, just very quickly, I think my entire comments, I believe, have made it crystal clear how deep the commitment is of the United States to Saudi Arabia's defense and security interests and to helping to resolve the Yemen crisis. That's why I'm here. And I wouldn't be here if we weren't committed. So we are deeply committed to this. And our work still continues, despite the consultants not being in the activity. We still share intelligence, we're still sharing information, and we will continue to work on the joint cooperation efforts in order to be successful. With respect to the enforcement here, there are measures that, various options available. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. I'd rather put the positive side on this and say that today, we have put on the table something that really does afford a resolution, and I look forward to Ismail working to now consult with all the parties, and hopefully we can shape something, because a lot of work has been done. And I give great credit to the Kuwaitis for all the work that was done in Kuwait and for the groundwork that's been laid. So I think there's an opportunity here, and I prefer to focus on that. If it does fail, we have any number of options that we can consider, and we'll consider them at the appropriate time.
بالنسبة للتفاهم اللي صار اليوم، كان في تأكيد على أهمية التمسك بالمرجعيات الثلاث اللي ذكرتها في البداية، اللي هي المبادرة الخليجية ومخرجات الحوار الوطني اليمني وقرار مجلس الأمن 2216. كما كان هناك تأكيد على أهمية توفير كافة الدعم لجهود المبعوث الأممي في هذا المجال، وحث الأطراف اليمنية على العودة إلى طاولة المباحثات للوصول إلى اتفاق يحقق السلم والأمن والاستقرار في اليمن. المملكة العربية السعودية وحلفائها في دول مجلس التعاون وفي التحالف دعم الشرعية ملتزمة بإيجاد حل سلمي لليمن، ونحن أيضا ملتزمين فيما يتعلق بإعادة بناء اليمن بعد الوصول إلى تفاهم واتفاق، وبعد للمساهمة في أمن واستقرار اليمن. اليوم بحثنا أفكار مع المبعوث الأممي الذي قد توضح حرص ورغبة دول التحالف في الوصول إلى حل سلمي. مجموعة الحوثي صالح هم الذين رفضوا التوقيع على الاتفاق على الاقتراحات اللي طرحها المبعوث الأممي في الكويت، بحجة أن هناك بعض الفقرات لا يوجد فيها وضوح. الآن تم بحث بعض الأفكار لتكون الصورة أكثر وضوحا. فالآن نعتقد أنه لا تجد حجة لأحد أن يقول أن الاتفاق المقترح أو الصيغة المقترحة ليست متكاملة، ونحن نأمل أن يستطيع الحوثيين وصالح أن يغتنموا هذه الفرصة للوصول إلى الاستئناف المفاوضات والوصول إلى حل سلمي يجنب اليمن مزيد من الدمار. شكرا.
شكرا لكم. Thank you very much.